It's 2:11 a.m. Your phone lights up the room like a police siren. Subject line: payment declined. Not late. Not overdue. Declined. You have money. You know you do. Your paycheck hits every month. Your account isn't empty. Your net worth on paper might even look fine. And yet, one denied charge can start a chain reaction that ends with fees, stress, and, for some people, bankruptcy. Because the problem isn't that you're broke. It's that you're illiquid. Most people treat those as the same thing. They're not. And confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes in modern personal finance. Let me show you what illiquid really means, why it sneaks up on smart people, how the system punishes it, and why the difference between wealthy and bankrupt is sometimes just timing. Imagine two people, same age, same city, same job title, same salary, same lifestyle, same rent, same car payment, same credit score. Let's call them Lena and Mark. Both say, "I'm doing okay." Both are one emergency away from chaos. But only one of them knows it. Lena has $18,000 in an index fund, $2,000 in checking, and nothing in savings. Mark has $8,000 in savings, $1,500 in checking, and $10,000 in an index fund. On paper, Lena is richer. Her net worth is higher. But in real life, Mark is safer. Because when the water rises, net worth doesn't keep you alive. Cash flow does. Liquidity does. Liquidity is a boring word for a brutal truth. How fast can you turn what you own into something you can pay with, without destroying its value? Not, can you sell it eventually? Not, does it count on an app? How fast? At what cost? Under stress. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. A lot of people who feel broke aren't actually broke. They're trapped. Their money exists, but behind glass. It's inside a retirement account, inside a home, inside a business, inside crypto, inside an index fund they swear they'll never touch, inside a car they're still paying for, inside a lifestyle they can't shrink quickly enough. So when life punches them in the mouth, medical bill, job loss, family emergency, what matters is not how much wealth they have. It's whether their wealth can move. And when it can't, they do something that looks irrational but is actually logical. They go into debt. Not because they're irresponsible, but because debt is liquid. It's the fastest cash machine in the world. Swipe, tap, approve. The system is engineered that way. And the price you pay for that speed, especially when you're desperate, is where things get ugly. Let's define it cleanly, in plain English. Being broke is a stock problem. It's a how much do you have problem. Being illiquid is a timing problem. It's a can you access it when you need it problem. A millionaire can be illiquid. A student can be liquid. This is why you can see headlines like high-income households living paycheck to paycheck and roll your eyes until you realize what paycheck to paycheck often really means. They have assets, they have obligations, and they have no buffer. So the paycheck is not income. It's oxygen. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, so just keep more cash, hold that thought. Because this is where the hype shows up. The hype says, invest everything. Make your money work. Cash is trash. Don't let dollars sit idle. And for long-term wealth, that logic is mostly right. But the reality is, if you invest every spare dollar, you may be building wealth and building fragility at the same time. It's like upgrading your house's value while removing the fire exits. You can be winning on paper and still be one emergency away from selling at the worst possible moment. This is the real danger of illiquidity. It doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It can force you into bad decisions at the worst time. The kind of decisions that turn a temporary problem into a permanent scar. Let's talk about what happens when liquidity disappears. Not in theory, in sequence. Here's the chain reaction. Step 1. A shock hits. Something that is not in your budget. A $2,400 car repair. A 2-week gap between jobs. A medical bill you thought insurance would handle. A family emergency flight. Step 2. You cover it with the fastest tool available. Credit card. Buy now, pay later. Payday advance. Personal loan. Borrowing from a friend. That's not moral failure. That's physics. You need cash now, not later. Step 3. The interest clock starts. And here's a detail most people don't feel until it's too late. Interest isn't a fee. It's a timer that speeds up when you're already stressed. When you're liquid, interest is annoying. When you're illiquid, interest is a predator. Because you're not just paying money. You're paying for time you don't have. Step 4. Your monthly obligations increase. Minimum payments rise. Cash flow tightens. Now your life gets smaller, even if your salary didn't change. Step 5. You start pulling from assets. You sell investments during a downturn. You take a 401k loan. You withdraw retirement funds and pay penalties. You sell a car and lose mobility. You miss a rent payment and get fees. You overdraft and get hit again. And now the system joins the fight. Because modern finance punishes bad timing. Not just with interest, but with cascading friction. Late fees, higher APRs, lower credit limits, account closures, insurance rate increases, deposits required for utilities, denied refinancing, denied housing. This is why liquidity crises feel like they snowball. They aren't just financial. They're institutional. You don't just lose money. You lose options. And losing options is what makes people go bankrupt. Bankruptcy isn't always a story of someone spending wildly. Often it's the story of someone getting trapped in a narrow corridor with doors that keep locking behind them. Now, let's zoom back to Lena and Mark. Lena has $18,000 invested. A sudden $3,000 expense hits. She thinks, I'll sell a little. No big deal. But that week, the market is down 12%. She sells at a loss. She triggers taxes. She feels like she failed. She promises herself she'll buy back later. Then another expense hits. Now she's selling again. And the psychological damage begins. Every time she sells, investing feels unsafe. So she stops. Her wealth plan dies not because she was wrong, but because her liquidity was fragile. Mark, with $8,000 in savings, pays the $3,000 expense and keeps his investments intact. On paper, Lena was richer. In outcomes, Mark wins. This is the central conflict. The same decision, invest aggressively, can create two completely different lives depending on liquidity. Now, you might be thinking, fine, so savings account solves this. But let's be honest, it's not that simple. Because the moment you keep cash, a different fear shows up. Inflation. The hype voice says, you're losing purchasing power. Cash is melting. You're falling behind. And yes, over long periods, cash underperforms assets. But here's the reality the hype often skips. Liquidity is not an investment. It's insurance. You don't buy insurance hoping it beats the S&P 500. You buy it so you don't have to sell the house on fire. Liquidity exists to protect your long-term plan from your short-term life. To keep you from selling your future at a discount because your present demanded cash. In other words, liquidity doesn't make you rich. Liquidity keeps you from becoming poor. Now we need to name the enemy precisely, because it hides under respectable things. The enemy is not having assets. The enemy is a mismatch. Your money is locked long-term while your obligations are due short-term. This mismatch is increasingly common because modern life is full of fixed payments. Rent or mortgage, car payment, insurance, subscriptions, debt, childcare, phone, utilities. These are monthly, predictable, and non-negotiable until they become negotiable in the worst way. And when your monthly life is fixed, your liquidity is your shock absorber. No shock absorber means every bump hits the frame. Now let's zoom out. Why is this happening to so many people now? Because we built a world where liquidity is scarce and leverage is everywhere. Think about what we've normalized. Homeownership is celebrated, but a home is illiquid. It's expensive to sell, slow to sell, and selling it under stress is how people lose wealth. Retirement accounts are celebrated, but they're locked, penalized, and designed to be untouchable. Investing is pushed earlier and harder, which is good, until it replaces emergency buffers. Consumer credit is frictionless. It's designed to feel like money. And the labor market, for a lot of people, is more volatile than it looks. Layoffs, contract work, irregular income, delayed payments. So what you get is a system that tells you, build long-term wealth, while it quietly sets traps in the short term. And when those traps snap, it says, why didn't you plan better? That's the uncomfortable truth. Personal finance is sold like a math problem, but it behaves like a timing problem. Now let's make this practical without turning it into a checklist lecture. If you want to stop confusing broke with illiquid, you need to see your life in two layers. Layer 1, daily money. The money that pays bills, buys groceries, covers emergencies. Layer 2, future money. The money that compounds, grows, and you don't touch. Most people have both, but they don't separate them mentally. They look at one big number, net worth, and assume it can solve a cash crisis. It can't. Not quickly. Not cheaply. So the first shift is psychological. Stop trusting the total. Start respecting the available. The second shift is structural. Create deliberate liquidity. Not excessive. Not fear-driven. Deliberate. Because there's a sweet spot between cash hoarder and fully invested with no escape hatch. If liquidity is insurance, the question becomes, how much insurance do you actually need? And the answer depends on volatility. Not market volatility. Life volatility. How stable is your income? How predictable are your expenses? Do you have dependents? How easy is it for you to cut spending fast? Do you have a support network? How quickly could you replace income? How exposed are you to single-point failures? One car, one job, one client. Two people with the same salary can need completely different liquidity buffers because their lives have different fragility. That's why generic advice feels wrong. 3 to 6 months is a slogan, not a plan. Liquidity should be sized to your life's risk, not your ego. Now, the third shift is the one that actually prevents bankruptcy. Build liquidity that doesn't rely on selling at the wrong time. Because here's the thing. Many people think they have an emergency fund because they have a brokerage account. That's not an emergency fund. That's a market-timed fund. If your emergency happens during a downturn, when emergencies often happen at scale, you are forced to liquidate when everyone else is also selling. That's not liquidity. That's exposure. Real liquidity is independent of market mood. It's boring. It's stable. It's there when the world is not. Now, I want to talk about the most dangerous form of illiquidity, the one that looks like success. Lifestyle illiquidity. This is when you're not poor, but your monthly commitments are so high that your income is fully spoken for. Your money isn't locked in assets. It's locked in obligations. Nice apartment, premium car, subscription stack, private school, travel financed on points and payments. You're not buying things. You're buying a fixed monthly structure. So when income dips, even slightly, you don't have flexibility. And the bigger your lifestyle, the harder it is to downshift quickly. This is why high earners can feel broke. They're not lying. They're illiquid in time. They can't change the machine fast enough. The machine demands feeding every month. And if they miss once, penalties start. This is where debt becomes bridge financing and then becomes permanent. Now zoom out again. This is bigger than individuals. Illiquidity is a systemic feature of modern capitalism. We encourage asset ownership because it stabilizes societies. Homeowners vote differently. Retirement accounts create long-term investors. We encourage investing because it funds markets and growth. We encourage credit because it powers consumption. And all of that works until a shock reveals that the average household has a thin layer of cash relative to the speed of life. This is why small disruptions can trigger big consequences. A medical bill doesn't just cost money. It drains liquidity, forces debt, damages credit, raises future costs, narrows options. A layoff doesn't just cut income. It changes the interest rates you'll pay for years. Illiquidity turns events into trajectories. And trajectories are hard to reverse. Now, let's be precise about what can actually bankrupt you. Bankruptcy is not just too much debt. It's the inability to meet obligations when they come due. That's liquidity again. You can have a large debt balance and survive if your cash flow is stable and you have access to liquidity. You can have small debt and collapse if your cash flow is unstable and you have no liquid buffer. The bankruptcy line is often crossed when the timing mismatch becomes permanent. You're always behind. You're always catching up. You're always borrowing from next month to survive this month. That loop isn't solved by one raise, because the loop consumes raises. It's solved by liquidity restoration, by rebuilding a buffer and reducing fixed obligations so the buffer can stay. That's hard. It's slow. It's not sexy, which is why it's rarely marketed. Now here's the final twist, the part that makes this idea uncomfortable. Many people aren't illiquid by accident. They're illiquid by design. Because the system profits when you have to pay for time. Fees and interest are not bugs. They are business models. When you lack liquidity, you become a customer for speed. Credit card interest is the price of immediacy. Overdraft fees are the price of mistiming. Late fees are the price of a cash gap. Payday loans are the price of panic. And even if you never touch those extremes, the liquidity premium shows up everywhere. You pay more when you can't pay now. So the real question is not just, how do I get richer? It's, how do I buy time? Because time is what liquidity gives you. Time to make rational decisions. Time to avoid forced selling. Time to negotiate. Time to pivot. Time to recover. And without it, even good financial habits can get punished. Now let's come back to that 2:11 a.m. notification. Payment declined. You stare at the screen and think, this shouldn't be happening. And that thought is exactly the trap. Because modern money can make you feel safe while you're fragile.
Are you broke?
It can make you feel wealthy while you're one timing mismatch away from collapse. So here's what I want to leave you with, without wrapping it in a neat bow. If someone asked you right now, are you broke? You might say no. But if I asked you a sharper question, if your income stopped for 60 days, without selling anything at a loss, without borrowing at a painful rate, without missing payments, would your life still function? Or would your wealth turn into a locked room while the bills keep knocking? And if the answer is uncomfortable, the next question is even more uncomfortable. In a world where credit is instant and assets are slow, who benefits from you being illiquid?